It's time to revisit the flow control kit that I installed on my E61 machine around 6 months ago. In my original video, I mentioned a few features that I don't like. The rough action and hypersensitive adjustment rank first, but that doesn't mean it's not worth having. It could be slightly annoying and yet quite useful. My real complaint is that I haven't found the benefits to be equal to the irritations. I've used it a fair amount and I don't care for it, which is not to say that you won't find it useful, and I will discuss the situations where I think this could still be desirable. But I am done. Let me show you why.
Oh my God.
It's like a miracle.
The idea here is that you can change water pressure and rates of flow on the fly during a pull. But as I showed in the first video, the valve is twitchy, hard to control, and difficult to repeat with precision. The device is mounted in a replacement mushroom valve, and it is quite nicely made by Profitec. But I've found that on any E61 machine, you can get great results with the stock mushroom simply by cycling the pump. I actually find this method easier to control and more repeatable than using the adjustable valve. All you need is a group-mounted pressure gauge. You don't need a rotary pump. You don't need to be plumbed in. Let's start by looking at a couple of shots on a stock E61. My only control will be to cycle the pump. This is a vibration pump fed by an internal reservoir. I've got 10 bar here with a flow rate of 7 milliliters per second, so pretty standard. The group-mounted pressure gauge is the only modification. I'm sure you've seen graphs like this, a recording of a shot with pressure and flow profiling, which implies that your inputs have immediate consequences, which they do, only not in the way you think. Let me show you. Watch the gauge and the output together while listening to the pump. I think you'll see that the response time is not what we'd expect from looking at one of those graphs. I begin with a leisurely pre-infusion, during which I cycle the pump between 10 and 6 bar until I get 1 gram out, at which time I open it up. When you time the whole shot from the start, different coffees will see different levels of saturation early on, so I time my shots after the pre-infusion. I find the mechanical milestone of 1 gram out to be very consistent and very repeatable. Notice that the pump takes very little time to move the needle, but quite a while to move proportionally more water through the coffee. Water pressure above the puck rises quickly, but the liquid flowing through the coffee bed is a different matter. There's a lot of lag. In other words, the machine responds promptly to our inputs, but the coffee doesn't. This, I think, is the source of a lot of confusion about pressure and flow profiling. Let's play with this a bit by cycling the pump numerous times between 6 and 10 bar throughout the shot. I want to show you that there's no harm in that. I'll pretend to do a really complicated profile, and I think you'll agree that with so much lag caused by the coffee puck, the relationship between input and output is very squishy. My system is set for a standard flow rate, so only a small amount of the lag you're seeing is caused by the pump's response time. It's caused chiefly by the buffering of the coffee bed. We have relatively high pressure on top of the puck and zero pressure on our side of the basket below. Many people assume that the pressure gradient between these points is smooth, but that's impossible to test, so let's call that a popular superstition. The pressure differences throughout the puck might well be chaotic, with local eddies, layers, vortices, etc. I think it's even more clear now that the difference between the machine's response time and the coffee's response time is substantial due to the buffering effects of the puck. But this is a harmless practice, even if you get a bit carried away. In spite of my being somewhat aggressive here, I got a nice looking shot of coffee which tasted just fine. And the puck is no worse for wear. As I've said repeatedly in the past, just match the dose to the basket and 80% of your problems disappear. So obviously you can get away with cycling the pump repeatedly, so long as you never pull a vacuum over the puck, which would unseat it and spoil the shot. Again, I find this easier than using the adjustable valve kit, and that's because it uses the wrong type of valve. A conical or needle valve is not what you want for on-the-fly adjustments, whether you're restricting the flow as this one does or diverting water to the drip pan. A needle valve works with the Slayer design because there are two predetermined fixed stages in the pull. I know which valve design would work better for on-the-fly profiling, but I think the idea might be patentable, so if any manufacturers want to reach out privately, I'm open to discussion. Otherwise, enough said. Now, there are some fancy espresso machines that do automatic pressure profiling via software, and they will show you what they're doing to your coffee on a graph. But a display like this is a record of your inputs, or your machine's inputs. It is not a record of what's happening inside the puck. There's no reason to assume that the shot mechanics are affected in lockstep with the input. Indeed, there's good reason to doubt that. So I think this whole business is a bit misleading, or commonly misunderstood. Based on direct experience, common sense, and repeated flavor evaluations, according to Wired Gourmet criteria, pressure and flow adjustments make sense only in broad strokes. By that I mean basic moves like pre-infusions or ramping up or ramping down during a shot. Intricate patterns and rhythms don't make any sense to me because, as we've seen, the coffee bed is a substantial buffer, so there is a great deal of lag. If you perform a lot of pirouettes and flourishes, I think it's just going to average out. What works for me is this: the simple practice of cycling the pump for an extended pre-infusion. I recommend timing the shot after you reach a preferred output. It's easy and intuitive, and it produces something similar to a Slayer-type shot. So now you know why I'm ditching the flow control kit. Nevertheless, you might find a kit like this valuable if you want to do turbo shots and your machine can't deliver 6 bar or less. I would not say it's ideal for that purpose, but it can be made to work. Or you might want to increase the flow rate, which would enable you to grind finer to deal with acidic coffees, especially if you have water like mine with virtually no residual alkalinity. There are other methods of pressure profiling, and the true champion here might surprise you. Watch this shot. Leisurely pre-infusion, smooth ramp up, and a gradual ramp down taking about 60 seconds. Flawless beginning to end. This is the Cafelat Robot manual lever device. It gives you immediate tactile feedback and a perfectly intuitive relationship between the force you put on the levers and the water pressure above the puck. It's totally analog. There's no electronic graph that might or might not be related to the shot mechanics. It hasn't even got a pressure gauge because none is needed. You know exactly what's going on throughout the shot. You literally feel it. I'd call it the king of pressure profiling devices for only $310. Coming up, well, first there's my holiday, so I'll be ignoring you for a while. And then we really must get into the used EK43 teardown, restoration, and mods. I'll show you how to test the motor's integrity, check other electrical components, evaluate mechanical wear, and identify parts that might need replacing. If you're thinking about buying a heavy-duty commercial machine second-hand, this video will prove invaluable. And I discovered something slightly bizarre inside here, suggesting unauthorized repairs, which I'm sure everyone will find interesting. So keep in touch. Cheers!